Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
Amanda always considered herself a woman not only beautiful and intelligent, but also, so to speak, belonging to the category of the elite of high society. Such a Patricia among the uneducated and inferior plebeians whose task is to serve her. Why should one be surprised? Joan's mother was the daughter of a general, and she herself was in charge of the Harrods department in the capital. Charlie's father was a rich Jewish jeweler who kept his store in the same Harrods, as well as an underground jewelry workshop, buying gold and selling gold jewelry made to individual designs. As a result, the girl grew up to be a capricious girl who knew no denial. Spoiled, as modern children would say, a major, a golden youth who only knows how to. Amanda, for once you're gonna settle down and live like a normal person. You're gonna start a family and have grandchildren. Dad, just think of the last century and say, like a decent person. What's wrong with the last century? Mom and I met and lived back then. We had a great life. There was a job, and the state provided us with this luxurious apartment though, with an extra payment. But that's what we have. But you, I'm not sure you'll have the same amount and the same quality. Amanda's mother Joan looked bitterly at her daughter. Yes, her father's right and God forbid they're gone. She'll go to the world, she'll skip the money, the apartment, the family jewelry, everything. She shook her head quietly, but did not say anything, but just poured soup into a porcelain plate for her father and sat down next to him. You should at least eat. Vaughn will be here soon. Mom, I'm almost 23. I'll decide for myself what and when it's good for me to eat. You feed your father. She got up from the table and went to her room. Yeah, Mom can be a real pain in the ass. No wonder her father sometimes looks at her funny. Where do you bring a boy, or a man for that matter, in here? So the mother will stand at the door and listen to what they talk about. And then the father's gonna lecture her. That's wrong about him, that's wrong. And the third one definitely wants their residence permit and the apartment. That's what happened with her last boyfriend. Yeah, and he's certainly not an option. Edward kind of guy, but he's so slave and handsome. He said he modeled and was in high demand in his circles. Yeah, well, Amanda's like an escort or a modeling model with some kind of angle. It wasn't that big of a deal back then. Woo, said pretty words was bypassed, strong, gave flowers and gifts. And then when she caught him already in her own apartment, which her parents gave her for her 20th birthday, in her bed chased. Where the hell are you going? The girl was 22 then, and since then, Amanda moved in with her parents and got smart. She remembered that a year ago she had dropped out of the Institute of Foreign Languages, where she was considered one of the best students. And so, not without Daddy's help, she returned to the walls of Alpha Mother. And one day at lunch, there was a very interesting conversation that started the story. Daughter, I hope that you will not quit the institute and at the end of it will take your mind and go to work in the company of my old friend. He is, by the way, a very successful entrepreneur. His company is an international level translation agency where the powerful order translations. What do you mean, the powers that be order translations? Okay. Imagine for a minute, two partners enter into $1 million or $1 billion contract. One of them is an Arab with his oil rigs, the other is our American diamond magnate. And the American does not understand a word of Arabic, just as the Arab does not know English. It is one thing to be a translator in negotiations and another thing to translate technical documentation, a contract, and the information should not go to competitors. So, my friend is the head of a company that does not just translate, but protects trade secrets. Dad, that's a fortune in the millions, holding the fate of billionaires in your hands. Well, I'm on my own. Who's your friend? I hope he's young and handsome, and most importantly rich, so that you, my precious parents, can rest assured that it will all remain intact and be inherited by your grandchildren. But on the rich part, that's true. But about young? Answer me a question. Do you think I'm young? No, well. Edward is not nearly my age, though he's still vigorous. We're practically the same age. And by the way, let me remind you at once he is quite an extravagant man, and his appearance hides a very delicate nature, subtle and delicate, wise and mysterious. Aha, like those Chinese monks who are dressed in a sheet, but inside they have a deep peace. Basically, you described my friend quite accurately. Well, his peculiarity is that almost no one knows him by sight. No one knows him and few people have seen him in person. You know, Mr. X running the empire from above. Only two of his trusted assistants communicate with him directly. The first is his son and the second is his daughter's husband. He has a third child, by the way, a son. But what does he do? I don't know. I know the pilot is military or civilian, but he doesn't get along too well with him. Uh-huh. Dad, how does he run the meeting? He makes contracts and stuff. All right, well, he's working through his assistants on this one. And if you need him to be present, I don't know how they do it, but it's not an office. As you may have inappropriately put it, it's a very respectable establishment. An old friend of mine is no longer young, you know, but he always has assistants, but he's always present in person for the most important cases. Personal business is translating and negotiating. So how many languages does he speak? Many. That's right, 5. But that was almost 20 years ago. Now maybe he's learned and I don't really ask much anymore, to be honest. So you're in touch with him. What do you think? I think so. Dad, will you introduce me? Sure, I'll introduce you in absentia. I'll submit your profile. I'll include a photo resume saying you're my daughter. But whether he'll want to meet you in person is unlikely. He almost never makes exceptions for anyone. So you're my daughter too, and he won't make an exception for me. Amanda was a little saddened because she had such a brilliant plan to quickly meet, seduce, and marry. But apparently, it will have to go a longer way to attract attention not only by appearance, but also by intelligence. If the man is so extraordinary and rich, then the beauties around him is a lot. She'll have to go the other way. Amanda thought about something. Her father looked at her carefully and realized that his daughter was already thinking about something. What if you intend to seduce him? Don't try. He loves his wife. And you know how it is with his money. You know, Dad, I didn't think so. Don't lie to me. You can't fool your father. I can see it in his eyes. And the man wagged his finger at her and smiled to himself. He knew his Amanda too well. He knew that if his daughter was up to something, she would definitely do it, though he knew Edward, who loved his wife too much and would not leave her for another, even a young and beautiful one. The family sat at the table for a long time, and everyone was silent about their innermost things. Amanda, you know. Dad, I understood everything at once. When you said no, it means no. I'm not gonna go out with him and try to seduce him or anything like that, if that's what you mean. That's what I mean. The girl was silent, but did not upset her father that she would not change her plans. After all, it was so much fun to overcome obstacles. And as her grandmother on her mother's side would say, he who doesn't take risks doesn't drink champagne. And her grandmother was a coquette, a beauty and a laughing French woman with a refined taste of style. It was she who instilled in her granddaughter a sense of beauty, raised her in her own style. Grandma, are you really French? I have my doubts. Grandma kissed her on the forehead and smelled of French perfume and tobacco. No, but you are my precious and my treasure. And remember, you're from the Elysian fields. Though your father is a Jew and his ancestors led the suffering in the desert for 40 years, but my blood in you prevails. And her grandmother hugged her even tighter and kissed her. She adored her granddaughter and indulged her in everything. Even Amanda's own mother sometimes scolded her for spoiling her granddaughter too much. She was a granddaughter to be spoiled. My dear, you didn't know that grandchildren are loved more than children. When Ada gives birth to a grandchild, then we'll see. Until then, let me raise her to be a true French woman. Amanda, but don't forget she's half of the Jewish people. That doesn't give her the right to suffer. She's not gonna walk in the desert for 40 years. She won't, but her father won't argue that she's like me. And such beauties for you? Thank you, dear son-in-law. That's how they lived, and the whole multinational family joked and rejoiced, spent holidays and worked. Everyone raised Amanda in their own way, and apparently brought up, so to speak, in this beauty a hell of a mixture of beauty and intelligence, stubbornness and agility. Though none of it brought Amanda any happiness. Her pride had caused tragedies, but she hadn't even guessed her future yet. Now her goal was to study and career in a large company. No small achievement in meeting an old friend of Edward's father. What's a long story? And she graduated with honors from the Institute. She knew 5 languages, one of which was Chinese, and successfully passed the interview at the translation agency Edward & Co. as an assistant translator of Oriental languages. Yun Lai was her immediate superior and a very imposing young man. Tall and green-eyed from Sichuan province. Ms. Amanda, I'm glad you'll be working with me with your education and language skills. He wanted to say something else, but I guess there just weren't enough words. Amanda knew exactly what kind of impression she made on men, and she took full advantage of it. And so on this first day at work, the girl, as a sign of respect for the head of the department, a luxurious pantsuit made of high-quality Chinese silk, and her hair was adorned with these studs that could be worn by adult Chinese women, decorated with green emeralds. As time went on, Amanda worked for 3. But in those 3 years, she never got closer to her cherished goal, to meet Edward. No matter how many times she begged her father, no matter how many senior administrators. But no one could help her, they just waved her off. They said they were busy, or the owner of the company was busy, and even her father once said to her, "Amanda, please, with all your Jewish heart, don't try to find Mr. Edward. He's already called me and tearfully asked me to stop trying to reach him. I'll tell you again, he doesn't make exceptions for anyone. He sees and hears you trying to get through to him. But Dad, I'm telling you, you have the persistence of the Jewish people in me. I want to look him in an eye, just to see what your mysterious Edward looks like. I don't even intend to flirt, but if he's so adamant, I'm begging for your hand. You can tell him so." Charlie just looked at his child, shook his head, and simply dropped his hands. He went to his office and closed it on the way, throwing to his spouse, "Joan, don't bother me. I'm going to go work in my study, and if you can make me some tea." Joan looked at her husband and, tearing herself away from her TV series, went to the kitchen to brew a flavored drink and prepare something to eat. Amanda was already sitting at the table eating her mom's pancakes. "Mom, your meat pancakes are great." "Oh yeah, you're driving Dad crazy. Now he'll be up all night working on his diamonds, ruby, and blueprints." The mother looked at her daughter reproachfully, but she just shrugged. She poured tea and took another pancake from the tray. Then, looking at her mother, she said, "Mammy, you know that after such night sittings in the office from under his hands come out real masterpieces. There are your earrings." And the girl nodded at Joan's ears. "One such creation, which I once wanted to buy from you, the whole Minister of Culture." "Yes." Joan remembered the incident and smiled at how funny the situation had been. Joan and Charlie had gone to the theater on New Year's Eve for one of the performances that were then given at the Bolshoi Theater. And the woman wore earrings that her husband gave her on the occasion. It is worth to specify at once it was his work. What started it? Among the rich and powerful ladies. It's scary to think about. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to buy them. They wanted to know where Joan had gotten such a beauty. But the woman didn't know what to say. She just looked at her husband. Charlie was ready for such a development, and so he firmly squeezed his wife's hand and told everyone that the earrings were brought from France in a single copy. Well, a similar one could be ordered by a unique sketch in his workshop. Joan remembered this move of her husband for a long time. As the young people of today would say, a marketing ploy. On the other hand, it helped attract a lot of customers to Charlie's workshop. "Mom, what are you smiling about?" Amanda noticed the cheerful sparkle in the woman's eyes. She wondered what she was thinking. "I remembered the first time I wore those earrings and how the rich ladies flocked to them like crows to shiny stones. Oh, I thought they'd rip my ears off. What they promised me for them. And you didn't give them back?" "No, of course not. It's your father's work. It was a gift for our first wedding anniversary. So, yeah, I was pregnant at the time. And so was my mom. Well, your grandmother used to say that when you're pregnant, you can't give anything or anyone away. You give away the smallest thing, you lose all your happiness." "Yeah, that's right. I learned my lesson." Amanda entered the kitchen, puffing on her pipe. "Mom, but you're smoking your tobacco again. You know Charlie's allergic to it. He'll be coughing up asthma again." "That's okay. He sits in his office anyway, sawing and scribbling. What else is he doing in there? Did you make him some tea?" "Yeah, I see. I made it and put some pancakes in it. Now go on, go and feed your jewel, Joan." And her mother shook her head, took the tray of food into the study, and Ada stayed in the kitchen with her grandmother for a heart-to-heart talk. Amanda had been named after her grandmother, and maybe that was why there had always been a special, warmer bond between them than with her mother. It couldn't be helped. Somehow Joan wasn't angry. "So my girl, how's work going?" "Oh, it's all right. But you see, Grandma, I've been wondering about the identity of our most important man, Edward." That's Charlie's friend. I don't know if I remember him. So you know him? The girl almost jumped out of her chair and ran to her grandmother. That way the little girl won't knock me over with all the furniture. I remember seeing him only a couple of times at Joan and Charlie's wedding. He came in, congratulated me, handed me a bouquet of white roses and an envelope. And as I recall, the amount of money in it was quite large, even by my standards. And that was it. He came, congratulated me, handed me a gift and left. Grandma, describe him to me, please. You know, granddaughter, it's been a while. I only saw him for a few minutes. Not much to say, though. Average height, average build, kind of blonde hair and gray eyes. That's it. Grandma, you say you don't remember anything? The woman turned around and wanted to leave, but in the doorway stopped for a second thought and turned to her granddaughter and said, "This friend of your father's. Edward has a special mark above the right eyebrow, a small scar, going from top to bottom and as if dividing it in half. Dad said it was from a stray bullet. Well, I know that for a fact. He was never in the war. Maybe he got in a fight somewhere when he was young. How about that?" And Amanda probably went to her bedroom with a balcony where she often liked to sit in an armchair smoking, as she did now, a pipe and drinking strong tea. So, to her daughter's statement that strong tea and tobacco are harmful, never paid attention. You know, Joan, when I buried your father at 30, I guess there's nothing else for me to do but tobacco and strong tea. So let's not argue. Okay. And the daughter just nodded and bought her mother her signature cherry-flavored tobacco every time. Yeah, that smell wafted throughout the apartment. And even Charlie, who respected his mother-in-law, couldn't say a word, even though he suffered a lot from the smoke with his asthma. And now Amanda Sr. was sitting on the balcony, rocking in a rocking chair, smoking tobacco and drinking fragrant and fresh-boiled tea. A warm summer evening floated before his eyes, streams of cars belatedly strolling by, shouting songs to the guitar or just hurrying home, packs of dogs running around the park. And no, there's a couple on the bench kissing, like she did with her husband, who she lost in a plane crash. Yes, my pilot, how could you leave me alone with a baby in my arms? And she cried quietly, trying to hold back the tears that rolled treacherously down her wrinkled cheeks. But it was good that she had Joan. Amanda had grown up so pretty. And Charlie's a good son-in-law. He's smart and makes good money. He loves her daughter and her granddaughter. It's a good thing I got a great son-in-law who won't let his women down. And Amanda's got it in her head to find Edward. That's okay. Charlie will get over this young thing. It happens in life. She sat there thinking about nothing. Just about life. About the movement of the moon in the sky. About the fate of her girls. And so she fell asleep. Joan came quietly out on the balcony and wanted to ask her mother something, but seeing that she was asleep in the armchair, she opened her warm plate and left the room, closing the door tightly. Everyone in the house was busy with his own business. Charlie, he was drawing a new jewelry sketch. The daughter is looking something up on the computer. The mother's asleep, and I was alone with my soap operas. What TV shows did your husband come out of his office and put his arm around Joan's shoulders? Yeah, well, everybody's busy. I'm the only one who's worried about the house. You're not. You're keeping our family home together. It's so nice to come back to. All that beauty and cleanliness. And the pies? I mean, it's all your handiwork. Joan, I've got something serious to talk to you about. Something's happened that I don't know about. The women are worried sick. No, it's okay. Let's go to my office. Charlie led her by the hand into the office, sat her in a chair, sat down at the table opposite and looked at his wife carefully. He didn't know how to begin this difficult conversation. Charlie, are you scaring me? Tell me. Is someone sick or what's wrong with your firm? No one's sick. The firm is thriving. It's Amanda I'm worried about. My mother or my daughter. The name confusion was often quite troubling. Yeah, there's a little problem with our daughter. You see, I'm concerned about her obsession with finding Edward. That's your old translator friend. What's the problem exactly? If he were just a simple man, just the owner of a translation agency, it would be a lot easier. You see, Edward. What's Edward got to do with Amanda? What, are they lovers? No, they're not lovers. Charlie got up from the table and went to the window, opened the frame and breathed in the night air. Charlie, are you scaring me? If Amanda and Edward aren't lovers, everyone is healthy from the firm and everything is fine, then what is it? Yeah, I'm worried about Amanda. Why? What happened to our daughter? She's pregnant. Well, that's good. At least we get to babysit the grandkids. Not if it was just about grandchildren. It is. Charlie, that word scares me. Mom, well, I'm sorry I can't say it right away. I have to get my head together and get it right. Well, you see, I've known Edward for a long time. I knew him in the army. He saved me from a stray bullet and has a scar. You know that? Yeah, I know that. You've told me that many times. I was starting to get jealous of you for him. But the man raised his hand warningly, and Joan was silent. She knew perfectly well that at such times she should not interrupt her husband or argue with him. If he chose to talk and tell her the truth, he would. You see, Joan, my dear man, you've always been my friend, my wife, my comrade in arms, but I didn't always tell you. And so it is here. Edward is talented. He's always been a polyglot. And if, for example, I tried to be quiet and never got involved in bad company, like a true Jewish boy who listens to his mother and plays the violin. Charlie, can we get back to the subject of our conversation, or rather, your monologue? Yeah, I can, but please don't interrupt. It's hard enough as it is. I haven't been myself for 3 days. I've noticed that. I'm sorry, darling. I'm listening to you very carefully. Well, when he was a young man, he got involved with the company, and that's why he was so fast in business. You see, Joan, his money has criminal origins. But that's the way it was in the beginning. Then he started making money in the most honest way possible, but relatively honest. And believe me, I never asked him how much money he had. He would call me sometimes to order a necklace or a ring, earrings, or a whole set of jewelry made of the most expensive materials, and he paid 3-5 times as much. But the man stammered again and didn't know how to continue. And Joan didn't rush her husband. Sometimes I was annoyed that he ignored all my invitations to come and visit us, and my only suggestion that he visit him was met with a stifled response. But it wasn't until 3 days ago that I realized why we'd only talked on the phone for so many years. Charlie, I really needed a drink right now. He didn't know why. It must have been the excitement. He didn't drink, or rather he did, but very rarely. But now he silently went to the bar and took out a bottle of cognac. My husband and cognac, Joan thought to herself. So it's really serious. Charlie, let me get you something to go with the cognac. Just give me a second. I had cheese and something else in the fridge. And without a word, the woman left her room and went to the kitchen. When the plate of slices was ready, she ran nose to nose with her daughter, who was on her way to the bathroom. Amanda looked at her mother perplexed. She pulled her headphones out of her ear and asked quietly, "Mom, we're fine." Joan tried to make the most simple and surprised face at the same time, so unobtrusively answering, "Yes, we're fine," and that all this she introduced with her eyes a tray with slices, as it smells like an appetizer of at least cognac. "I'm sure it's fine." The mother just nodded her head and went on, throwing on the way, "Can't your father and I have a shot of cognac late at night and just sit around and talk?" Amanda didn't say anything to that, just shrugged and walked into the bathroom. Come on, what was she really? After all, the ancestors are adults now, not burdened with the worries of children, and there are no grandchildren yet. They can afford a cognac, especially on a night like this. "Joan, I've also poured you a shot of cognac, keep company. You know I can't drink alone, provided you tell me everything honestly." "Joan, you know very well. They gave me a cork to sniff, I'm already drunk." And her husband handed her a glass of cognac. So the conversation is really serious, Joan thought. There goes Mama's French cognac. It was 15 each. No one in the bar ever caught fire. So let's toast us first. And he clinked glasses with her. He drank it in one gulp and had a piece of cheese. Then he went to the bar and poured himself another shot of cognac. "Charlie, won't it make you sick?" "No, it won't. It just won't. Let's get back to the subject at hand. Edward. You know Lemmy? Joan, he's very rich, a fucking billionaire. But that's not the point. He called me 3 days ago and told me he was sick with cancer or something. But that's not the point. You know he's got 2 sons and a daughter and $1 billion fortune. Charlie, you say money, 1 million, 1 billion. But what I don't understand is how Amanda's involved. Because he left all his money to her in his will. Only he left the company to his children. Joan sat there and couldn't believe her ears. Amanda's millions, her husband's strange friend whom she had only glimpsed once in her life at a wedding. She shook her head, as if trying to get what she had heard out of it. Charlie, do you realize what you just said? You and I have never been given a penny in our entire lives. My mom and your parents don't count. And Amanda's got millions and billions of billions. He's never even met her. I agree. He's never seen her in person. I've shown him pictures of Amanda. That doesn't change the point. Joan almost screamed, but she stopped herself. I mean, she didn't want the whole apartment to go up in flames. What are we supposed to do with all this, except to be happy that we, or rather our daughter, is a millionaire? Joan, you're missing the point. It's billions in blood money, it's criminal. And the kids aren't just gonna give it to our daughter. Yeah, so now we have to drop everything, change our name and run for our lives. That's how it works. Joan, I don't know, Edward didn't take no for an answer, or rather, no money on my behalf. The only thing he asked was that Amanda fly to Israel and pray for him at the Holy Sepulchre. Yeah, so he wouldn't die and live happily ever after. I don't know, maybe he did. The man was pacing around the room and didn't know what to do. His friend had set a clear condition: if Amanda wanted to accept his inheritance, she just had to come to Israel and visit the Holy Sepulchre. Charlie remembered how the conversation with his friend had happened. Edward, but Charlie, I'm not arguing. It's my will. If she wants to, let her just put a candle for my health and yours. But why don't you leave the money to your kids, since they were never around? When I found out my diagnosis, not there during therapy and rehab when I needed their support. Warm words, because I don't have them, and I think they're company enough. And you're my longtime friend, my savior, and Amanda's like a daughter to me, even though I've never seen her in person. What do I tell Adelaide? How do I explain it all at once? That she can be your heir if she fulfills your condition, or else? I don't think it's necessary to say where the money comes from. It's just that my children won't leave it. It's just like that, and they'll be looking to see where it went, where it was spent. Or does it not matter? Just make up some story like you won the lottery or something. Charlie, I don't know, you figure it out, but I don't want my hard-earned money to go to them. Give her a gift. I remember it's her birthday this summer. Let her have a vacation at the Dead Sea. Yeah, I don't want the Dead Sea to be literally dead to her. It won't. I know you're still a cameraman, so you can rest easy. I, by the way, booked her a better hotel room from Jerusalem to David Citadel in Jerusalem at one of the best in Israel with open dates for a week. Consider this my dying request and gift to Amanda, even to you and your family, my friend. She can spend it as she sees fit. Edward, give me the answer to one question. Why won't you come and visit me? I'm afraid, not for me, but for you and your family. I'm going to transfer this money through an anonymous foundation. No one will ever know where it came from or who the donor is. Just remember that, and the account will be set up at a bank in Switzerland. They know how to keep the rights of anonymity. And when the time comes, you and Amanda will be given a copy of my will. All the information will be there. Charlie listened to his friend and couldn't understand how it had happened. Why? After all, Edward had always been smarter than him, wiser and quicker. But apparently, it did not save his family from falling apart and breaking up. The man understood how painful it is when betrayed in a difficult moment, the most dear people, unable to lend a helping hand, even just to comfort with a word of support. What he would have done. If Amanda and Joan left, he couldn't. Charlie, are you listening to me? Yeah, sorry, just thinking. What would I do if I were you? If suddenly Amanda and Joan left me like this in my hour of need? Don't tell me you wouldn't do the same thing. I wouldn't. You're probably right in your own way. It's a shame to be betrayed by the people closest to you, but... Come on, my friend, no more of this. But let her get what she deserves. All right, I'll talk to her one of these days. And you, call me the day after tomorrow. Edward didn't say a word. He just hung up the phone, as if to leave a final parting word. It was his way of leaving without saying goodbye. And Charlie listened to the short beats for a long time. I don't know what to think or how to proceed. Well, I should consult with my wife and then think about what to do. But Charlie couldn't think of anything sensible to send his daughter to Jerusalem. How then to explain the appearance of $1 million fortune in his daughter's name in a Swiss account? And as luck would have it, the man simply did not know what to do. But he didn't want to procrastinate either. And now you decided to share it with me so I can think how to be and what to think. Joan is excited and angry at the same time. Joan, I hear a note of annoyance in your voice. You're angry. Charlie, how can I not be nervous when it's millions of dollars worth of children? Our daughter's in jeopardy. What am I supposed to do? Change her looks, change her passport, or shoot your Edward tears? Joan, please. I don't know what to do. But he said that the money is untraceable. And you believe that? Joan looked reproachfully at her husband. Apparently, the brandy has stupefied your mind, or is it the lust for money? Dad, Mom, what kind of money? Amanda entered the room, and she looked at her parents closely. You guys are splitting something without me. Why are Mom and I making so much noise? Dad tried to make the simplest and most surprised face possible at the same time, which really didn't work out so well. Dad, is that what you can't drink, that you can't lie? Tell me what happened. Charlie looked at his spouse carefully, but Joan herself was confused by this turn of events and just shrugged her shoulders. Father didn't know what to do. After all, Edward had given him clear instructions not to say anything to his daughter if possible. And on the one hand, Amanda, they have a girl smart, savvy, and use her like this in darkness. I'll tell the mother. I don't think withholding it would be the best idea. Joan herself realized it would be the best option, though the fear for her daughter was overpowering. But after thinking it over, the woman simply nodded her head. No, let it be what it would be. And Amanda herself went all in her father's smart with an inquisitive and sharp mind. Maybe she could suggest a better solution. What's to hide? Amanda heard her parents arguing purely by accident when she was on her way to bed, but now the sleep was gone. She sat down defiantly in the chair opposite her mother and looked up at her father. Daughter, remember, you wanted to know about my friend, what he is in general. I got it. He snitched on me again. Or did he do worse? Just fired me. That's right. Now she was already shouting because she didn't understand who this mysterious Edward was and what kind of game he was playing. Now he's got her parents fighting over him. Amanda, calm down. No one fired you, but you know, the father didn't know how to tell his daughter about the inheritance of Israel's dying friend. Dad, you just start telling her, that's all. The girl waved her hands theatrically, making a sort of curtsy. Joan looked at her daughter and grinned to herself. Yes, such a one would not be lost. She was like her father in mind, but not in character. Her mother, after whom she was named. Hellraiser, Joan had sometimes jokingly called her when she was a child, when the little girl was up to mischief. Edward is sick. He has cancer and it's in the last stage. But he's so rich and he left all his money to you. Amanda sat in the chair and didn't understand a thing, but immediately a smile played on her face, strained and uncomprehending. Dad, are you and Mom playing a trick on me? Or is there a hidden camera in here? Now from behind the balcony door or the closet, the hostess will come out and say, Tatum. No, I spoke to my friend 3 days ago. He gave me his will. But in order for you to get the money, you have to go to Israel. After that, Edward will send me and you a copy of his will, all the documents. Amanda, that's $1 billion fortune. Dad, what about his children? He has 3, if I'm not mistaken. They get to keep the firm you work for. That's it. I don't understand why he chose me. He's never met me. I saked him at the time, but he told me that's the price for that courageous act. And as for the children, I asked him the same question, and I know what he told me, that the children were not by his side in a difficult moment, did not lend a helping hand, did not show sympathy. Okay, you reached out in your time of need. I'm going to Israel to atone for his sins. Amanda is not a fool. And my father pounded his fist on the table with anger, so loudly that it echoed throughout the apartment. Everyone was silent for a moment. Amanda was the first to come out of this heavy silence and looked at her father and asked, Dad, are you serious? It's true, it's not a joke. But the fact that Edward left me his billions. Amanda, I've said everything. Now I'm thinking about when you're going to Israel, where you're already booked into the best hotels, and for a week with open dates. And how do we keep you safe? We hire security with that kind of money, and what if I do? No, sweetie, you don't want to draw attention to yourself. I already thought they knew your face, and then you can go and rest. We'll pray. Then I'll get my money later. The girl rubbed her hands together. You shouldn't say that. I'm my friend who did you not just a favor, but a great good. Dad, I know how great a favor he did. I've been buzzing all over the company about how rich he is on this subject. Who's gonna get it all? Dad, I know. Good. Why don't you come with me? It's true, but hiring security is a lot of attention. and you're forgetting your historical homeland. No, you should go by yourself. When do you plan to go? You have to decide when to take a vacation at work, don't you? Dad, I've been working 6 months without a day off. I'll take time off. I'll say I'm sick. Depression and all that. That's tomorrow. Well, it's today. The girl looked at the clock, which showed 1:30 in the morning. She poked her mother and father on the cheek and went to her room. She needed to rest, to think things over in private, and just to open the window and smoke. Amanda didn't smoke, but now she really wanted to. Hell, I'd kill for a cigarette. And as luck would have it, they were out. Really, she couldn't go to her grandmother's house to ask for her pipe. I'll buy one tomorrow. I'm going to bed now. At this point, the parents in the study also talked a little more and went to bed, immersed in their own thoughts and the restless world of morphine. But little did they see the black car drive away from the house, when all the windows in their apartment went out and headed for the exit out of town. Behind the wheel sat a handsome young man whose gray eyes sparkled in the dark interior of the expensive foreign car. Yes, the family. Wait, not all is not yet lost. The young man not so long ago, only the third day, had been following this apartment and its households. This is where his father called, the father who decided to give away his billions. And to God knows who. You're lying, Dad. You're not giving your blood money to that family. The conversation of the father with Charlie accidentally overheard the younger son of Edward, passing by the not tightly closed door of his office. And what he heard struck him, though. Not even the fact that his father was ill with cancer and had nothing left to live for. It's that he's leaving his money, not to his kids, but to some broad. That's not gonna happen. He yelled and pounded his fist on the steering wheel. The guy drove to the country house he had rented recently, so as not to attract much attention. He excused himself from work, took a vacation, hooked up his familiar specials to find out the address where his father had called, and now he's in this town. Yes, nothing remarkable. An old, though Sarris-built 5-story building. Charlie's family on the 3rd floor. All standard, but he didn't know what the family looked like. Well, one of them, most likely a young girl. So how do you know who you are? The guy said this to himself and still couldn't think of anything. And how to ask the neighbors. But what if he runs into one of their family? What then? Or the neighbors wouldn't say anything. There's no way around it. Adrien drove up to the country hotel and stopped the car in the parking lot and opened the window and smoked. Tobacco smoke, cherry flavor tickle, nostrils made a shroud in eyes. What am I supposed to do now? Dad? Kill her or kill you? I don't think you're gonna die of cancer anytime soon. You've probably already made a will, and your death will be useless, killing her. What's in it for me? I'm not her husband, I'm not her brother. Maybe I could make her fall in love with me, marry her off, and then I'd be on my way. But the guy realized how unrealistic that plan was. No, it's realistic in theory, but it's not. But too many caveats and references to errors that could ruin everything then follow, and there. It was, for the moment, the surest solution. And there we'll see, thought the guy, and getting out of the car, threw a cigarette butt under his feet. We'll live, we'll see. The next day he was standing outside Charlie's house again, watching the entryway, where some nice old ladies were sitting on a bench. Yeah, there's a lot of those in yards. Why don't I go talk to them? And Adrien got out of the car, slowly walked to the entrance, smoking a fragrant cigarette on the way. No cigarette, and to nice old ladies better not to approach. There is nothing to breathe smoke on them. Old ladies don't like that. He stood aside smoking and watching as a couple came out of the entrance. 2 women, apparently a mother and daughter. Amanda, let's go to Harrods. I'll call a cab, Joan said, and said hello to the neighbor. She began chatting sweetly with him. Meanwhile, Amanda glanced askew at a guy standing nearby. I wonder if I've seen him around here yet. Maybe one of the new neighbors is cute. When the cab pulled up, Mom and daughter got into the car, but Amanda managed to throw the cute guy on the way. Hey, handsome, you're cool in the cabin on the first seat next to the driver. Yes, she's a real hottie, Adrien thought, so she can twist anyone you want, even my father, a saint. Or maybe she is. No, a father would not cheat on his mother. Not like that. She's a bitchy girl, Amanda, wiggling her ass around in front of everybody. The guy heard a familiar name and he got nervous. Oh, he's so lucky. He just came up and saw them in person, so to speak. Most likely a mother and daughter. and to one of them, most likely Amanda, as the neighbor called her, the father left the money. That's it. You're so busted. I'm not gonna let that money get away from me now. At the very least, I'm gonna make you nail her to the wall. And then we'll see. Then events unfolded rapidly. 2 days before the trip abroad, Adrien met Amanda and asked her out. The girl was not in too much of a hurry to let him into her social circle, the more so she was not going to take companions on a trip abroad. Amanda, and who is that young man next to you? Asked her mother when the girl returned from a walk in the evening. It's just an acquaintance, Mom. He asked me out yesterday. So gallant. Look at the white roses he gave her. And the girl pointed to the bouquet lying on the nightstand in the hallway. Let's put them in water. Too bad they'll wilt. My father forgot the last time he gave me flowers. Yes, father. Joan, what are you talking about? Yes, Amanda's new boyfriend gave me these. Look, my dear husband, what beautiful white roses. And you've forgotten the way to the flower shop. And my mother began to carefully arrange the flowers in a vase. Yeah, I must have forgotten, Charlie thought, and he put his arm around his wife's shoulders. Oh, darling, I've really gotten so forgetful. But I'm sorry. I promise to make it up to you. We'll send your mother's oldest daughter, Amanda, to a resort in Paris or Baden-Baden. And we'll have a romantic dinner. I agree. The woman laughed softly and kissed her husband on the cheek. How cool they are, thought the girl and smiled. I wish I could find my favorite one for life. Adrien, no, it's more like a fascination with a beautiful face and athletic figure. At least the girl did not suspect the danger of this meeting. Already 2 days later, Amanda called a cab and went to the airport to fly to the promised lands of her ancestors. Adrien never saw her off, saying that he was called to work, and though the girl didn't believe it. But the guy had indeed been called into work the night before. Adrien helps out the only available pilot. You have, as it happens. 2 pilots are sick, and one broke his leg on the escalator. Get down to the airport right away. Dan, you really know how to ruin a vacation, don't you? Well, it's a good thing I have some free time right now. It is. All right, I'm on my way. Give me a location. Where to? And the next morning, Adrien sat in the pilot's office on the flight to Tel Aviv, Israel, quietly angry. After all, his relationship with Amanda had just begun, and these first days are so important to attract her and make her think only about herself, to fall in love, and then to act according to the situation. Now we have to fly there, then back. After all, to replace him with someone. The airplane smoothly took altitude and floated on it like a white bird. Amanda sat near the porthole and looked at the white clouds that covered the sky under the airplane. It was the first time she had ever been on an airplane, so far from home, and to be honest, she was a little scared. Girl, is this your first time flying? Her neighbor's voice brought her out of her stupor, and she turned sharply to the stranger sitting next to her. Yes, first time. I'm sorry, I must have scared you. I just saw you grabbing the armrest on takeoff. It happens. I myself, the first flight, was getting used to not shrinking into the seat. The girl smiled and looked at her hands. Exactly. Right there the fingers turned white. How hard she gripped the armrests. Amanda laughed a ringing loud laugh and let go of her hands, turning half-turned to the guy and began to flirt with him. But at that moment, a stewardess and a man in years dressed in simple pants and a shirt entered the cabin and began to look around. They must be coming our way. The guy nodded towards the stewardess to the old men who were walking towards him. Young lady, good afternoon. If you don't mind, can we put a man next to you? There was a misunderstanding in economy class and 2 tickets were sold for 1 seat, but the seat next to you was not sold, and it's free for the rest of the flight. I don't know. Amanda looked closely at the old man, old pants and jacket. Great eyes that stared intently, straight into his soul, and a scar above his eyebrow. Strange. For some reason, she had the feeling that this man hadn't just happened to be here by accident. Yeah, that scar across the eyebrow, the gray eyes. Young lady, if you don't mind, may I sit down? My legs ain't what they used to be, and my health ain't what it used to be. You know, if you don't breathe in my direction, I don't mind. And Amanda snorted with pathos in the direction of the man, who sat down on the edge chair and adjusted his shirt, putting his hands on his knees. In his hands, the man held a briefcase not old, but not new either. And at first, Amanda didn't understand why this particular briefcase, or rather the coat of arms on the clasp, but at that moment she just shook her head, threw away all thoughts of the old man, and paid attention to her new neighbor again. That's how they flew almost all the way to the landing. That's when the incident happened. Amanda wanted to go to the toilet and asked the stewardess for permission to go to the sanitary room. She nodded and told her to hurry up. Soon they would be pulling up at the airport and the bathroom would be close to the sanitary area. Yes, thank you. And Amanda made sure to get out of her seat quickly. But, as luck would have it, at that very moment the girl tripped over the legs of a drowned old man sitting on the outermost seat. She almost fell. Barely able to grasp the chair, immediately pounced on the old man. "What are you doing? You put your legs out, so I almost broke my head." "Daughter, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean it." "I'm sorry." The man started making excuses for her and grabbed her arm. But Amanda gave him such a look that he let her go himself. Strange those gray eyes and the scar running across her eyebrow. How would they let people like you in business class anyway? Or should I call the captain? Well, you can if you want. The man's voice sounded quiet and clear with no ingratiation in it, more like a desire to fight back. And definitely on call. I'll explain how passengers from economy class are transferred here. The girl Amanda turned to the stewardess. "Can I get the captain over here?" "And girl, don't look at me like that." The man had already realized that with such a pretty girl you shouldn't talk tough. "How should I look at you?" Amanda herself did not understand why she suddenly became irritated by this man with an unassuming exterior and gray eyes. And her grandfather just lets himself be put like that. But at least with respect, as a man older than you. Everyone in the salon turned toward the male voice. In the aisle stood a young man dressed in a pilot's uniform and looked carefully at the dude. He knew her from her voice, but he couldn't forgive her for treating his father that way. "Adrien, are you the captain?" "Not captain, chief pilot, and the man you yelled at just now is my father. It's nothing personal. I'll call the police at the airport and have them report you." "One more time. Nothing personal." The guy looked at the girl with contempt in his eyes and turned around and went into the cabin. The whole cabin gave him a standing ovation, but Amanda didn't understand why. Her father was an old grandfather, not so well dressed, who smelled of old age. And then they applauded brought tears to the girl's eyes, and she wanted to fall through the ground. I mean, how could this be? She was always the queen, the star, and now because of some old man she's despised. And they'll file an administrative case if Edward finds out. Then the money's gone, and so is her vacation. Amanda sat down in her seat and buckled her seatbelt as the plane was coming in for a landing. Indeed, not the most cheerful prospect. And what a way for her to snap out of it so immediately and go. But she could have flown another day. But she didn't. She felt what? "Dear passengers, our plane is now landing at Tel Aviv Airport, Israel. Please fasten your seatbelts. Thank you for choosing our airline." In just a few minutes, the plane had already landed at the airport and the flight attendants opened the doors in a friendly manner, letting the passengers out. Only Amanda sat in her seat until the last moment and did not want to get off the plane. Then she saw Adrien walking towards her. "You're the last thing we need around here right now. You want to kick me out the door? Well, go ahead and embarrass me. How could I not see you for the scoundrel you are? I don't know. And now I'm reaping the benefits. I'm not me. I just don't like it when people snap at my passengers like that. And if he's my father, you forgot to tell me." "I didn't. I just didn't say anything. Doesn't change the way I feel about you. I didn't even know he was on my flight. I saw my father when I came out here when the stewardesses called. Are you really gonna report me to the police?" Amanda looked at the young man hopefully. "No. Dad told me not to report you, and he won't do it himself. At least he asked me to tell you to let it be a lesson to you for the future." The girl smiled and jumped up from her chair. "What did you poke him in the cheek with?" "I'm in Israel for a week, so maybe we'll. I don't think we'll see each other today or in the next 2 days. I'm flying back tomorrow, and I have to rest. But we can have coffee tonight." The girl smiled and, grabbing her backpack, left the airplane, waved to him at the gangway. "You didn't know who you had insulted and what kind of problems it could cause. But it's strange why my father flew economy class, even though with his capital he could rent the whole airplane. What's the matter with their entire airplane fleet? I should talk to him." But then the phone rang like a magic wand. "Yes, father. It's my son. What are you doing at work? I told you I was on vacation. I got called in last night. There's a problem with the pilots. 2 of them got sick. One broke his leg, so there's no one to work. I see. Dad, why are you flying to Israel in economy class? You can rent, well, almost the entire fleet of airplanes. Son, I'm rich. The rich have their quirks. I hope you understand. Now get to work. I'm off to wander the promised land. The son nodded his head and said nothing. If his father kept silent, he would certainly never tell the true reason for his deed. But the boy guessed that his airplane ride and Amanda were two parts of the same whole. Apparently, the father had decided to follow the girl in person. But why? He's got his own staff of special services, security guards, who'd be able to keep an eye on her. And here he is. Although he understood that the father personally must know everything about a person, especially about who he's going to give his money to, something was not what it seemed. He ruffled his hair and went back to the flight office for a snack and coffee. He hoped to meet Amanda in the evening and find out what was going on. Edward decided to follow Amanda for a while. He wanted to know more about her, how she looked, how she spoke, how she behaved, what she did. He bought 2 tickets for the same flight with Amanda in economy and business class in advance and picked out simpler clothes. There is nothing to draw attention to himself and expensive Rolex shoes and shirt from Armani. Already on board the plane, he asked to go to business class. After all, as if by magic, 2 tickets in economy class had been sold by mistake for the seat, and the passenger had already taken it. Well, that's good. So there would be an excuse to sit next to Amanda, to watch her. The girl was pretty and had a nice voice, but of course her behavior did not please the man. In Charlie, he was confident in himself and understood that he had done everything that should have brought up his daughter, but apparently something missed. Edward did not like the way the girl behaved, and in his head flashed the thought of whether or not to cancel his will. What about giving the money to charity? But I owe Charlie my life, and now to do this. The man said it to himself. Just then a waitress came to his table and brought his order. It had been a long time since he'd been to Israel. It would be time for him to have lunch, and then to rent a hotel room and buy some suits to dispel his doubts about Amanda. The man decided to try to make contact with her again and talk to her in a more relaxed atmosphere. And then we'll see how I proceed from there. Your lunch. Bon appetit. The waitress placed the tray in front of him and smiled. She'd seen all kinds of customers, richly dressed, but counting pennies for lunch and never leaving a tip, as well as those not dressed in the best way. Like this one, the ones who order expensive meals and leave a lovely tip. Let's hope this one isn't stingy. The waitress' expectation was fulfilled when she gave the guest the bill. He left quite a bit, and thank you, daughter. It was delicious. Thank you, chef. And thank you for choosing us. Come again. The man got up from the table and bowed towards the old city. Yes, Israel is eternal, and nothing has changed much. On these old streets, there are still small stores and stores. There are still the same callers. There's the smell of local pastries, and we should find a hotel. This flight and meeting Amanda had already thrown him off his game. We should get cleaned up and rested, then go shopping tonight. Already close to the evening, Edward drove by cab to a large shopping center with a firm intention to do a little shopping. As his wife would say, a couple hours later, the man was carrying several bags of suits, a shirt, and new Italian shoes. Going down to the 3rd floor, where there were a large number of cafes and restaurants, Edward decided to have a snack at a local cafe, and at the table across from them sat Amanda and his son Adrien. Yes, what he didn't expect to see was a couple of lovebirds chatting sweetly and drinking coffee with Oriental sweets. Interesting. Well, I'll just watch you guys from the sidelines. Maybe I'll discover something interesting. Edward was the kind of man who always tried to get to the bottom of things before making a final decision. Apparently, in this case, he was wrong about the girl. The billionaire thought to himself, at least the will has already been drawn up. Come on, it can be canceled. But what about Charlie? I've already given him my word. A dilemma, he thought, but he realized that there was no turning back. Now he'd either have to find Amanda good qualities to justify his decision or re-educate her. Well, what was there to re-educate? The girl was already an adult with an established self-image and character. Although in the company they called her very talented and promising, which, in fact, influenced his decision. But in life, here you go, your lats and ice cream. Thank you, lovely girl. Edward looked up at the waitress and was surprised to see the same one who had been serving him since morning in the cafe. Oh, I see you work here? Good afternoon. Actually, evening again. Yes, I have to work 2 jobs. I have 2 younger brothers and sick parents. It's bad enough your parents are sick, but don't worry. The doctors in Israel work miracles. That's true, but I have to work several jobs. The man looked at the girl carefully and nodded. Without saying anything, the waitress went on working, and he sat and thought how good it is that there are such children. My children and my wife would hardly work 2 or 3 jobs to cure cancer or something. And here we'd have to help her. He raised his hand as the waitress walked by and asked for the bill. Your bill, please. The girl placed the book with the man inside in front of him and took a step back. Adrien took some large bills out of his wallet and put them inside along with his business card. Then he covered the book with his hand and looked at the girl. Here in the book is payment for the coffee and ice cream served and $3,000 for medical treatment. Don't argue, you earned it. Consider me your rich fairy and I can afford it. Also, my card is in there. If you need the best doctors and or more finances, don't hesitate to call. Do you understand me? The girl smiled and took the book. Thank you very much. Can I give you a kiss? And without waiting for an answer, she kissed him gently on the cheek. There you go. What will the other customers say? It was nice anyway, and he was a little embarrassed. They wouldn't understand. Thanks again. And the girl took the tray of dishes and went into the kitchen. Yeah, it's nice to do good deeds, the man thought. And looking at the table where Amanda and Adrien were sitting earlier, he didn't see anyone. But he missed these two. If you mean the young couple, they had gone to the first floor a minute ago. A waitress passing by pointed to the exit. He nodded and took the bags. He went down to the first floor, but didn't see them there either. Okay, we should go to the hotel, to rest and think in silence. Silence was something he'd always missed in this world. In his early youth, when his blood was boiling and turbulent and often led him down a crooked path. In adulthood, when all the energy and time was taken up by work, family and children, and even now. And now I am being eaten from the inside by cancer. There is silence, but there is simply no time. I have no time left. Coming out of the shower and falling on the wide bed, Edward lay and thought about what to do with Amanda. But apparently, fate got ahead of him. And the very next morning, the man was awakened by his son's call. Hey, how are you feeling? I'm fine. Why? That's not why you woke me up. No, please tell me, what hotel are you staying at? Why? You know, I need this. For you or for someone, Adrien? I know you. You're my son, so tell me. Why do you need this information? I mean, who needs it and why? Dad, okay. Amanda wants to apologize to you. And you accidentally didn't tell her I'm a billionaire, and now she's trying to. Not Dad. I didn't tell you anything at all. She and I are dating. We're just getting started, and there. But I gotta be honest, I'm glad the girl's thinking about it and wants to make things right. Okay, I'm in Old Town. The hotel by the market is the first one. If you stand with your back to the Cathedral of the Blessed Virgin Mary, there's a fountain. There's a big, beautiful one with lights and music. You know the place. Of course I do. You and your mom used to visit and bring photos. Yeah, it's my mom's and my mom's place. Okay, well, have Amanda go to the front desk and get me through reception first. He hadn't expected such a turn of events, but he was glad that the girl came to her senses and admitted her guilt and decided to apologize to him. So nothing was lost. Charlie had raised her well. And what happened? We can write it off to the difficulties of translation or the peculiarities of upbringing. Toward lunchtime, the receptionist called Edward's room and said that Amanda was waiting for him in the lobby and asked him to receive her. Thank you. Tell her I'll be right down, and if she wants, let her take a table in your wonderful restaurant and make an order for herself. I'll take care of all the expenses. Edward hung up. He had to tidy himself up and try on that gray English suit he had bought yesterday. Half an hour later, the man stood in front of the mirror beaten and on the vent corrected the suit. Yes, now you can show yourself to the girl, corrected the Rolex on his hand, and by the hair he went out into the hall, going down to a small and cozy restaurant. He looked around the hall, but didn't see the girl. Oddly, she came and then changed her mind. Why should he be surprised? Probably does not want to see an old man in old clothes, but the man was wrong, and then he heard soft footsteps behind him. Good afternoon. The girl's voice trembled. Edward turned around and could not believe his eyes. She was practically a copy of Charlie standing in front of him. The same eyes, nose, and chin as his, only the lips. The girl had inherited the same full ones from her mother. Amanda. Yeah. And you know, I was wrong. I'm sorry I yelled at you like that on the plane. So I see. Nothing. I guess not really. It was just my first time on an airplane. Honestly, I was really scared. When I'm scared, I act like this. Improperly finished her sentence for her. Yeah, well, can I buy you a coffee? No, I'll buy you lunch. I mean, it's lunchtime. And by the way, have you picked anything off the menu yet? No, I just looked and then I went to the bathroom. Oh, good. Uh-huh. Then can I order to my liking? Amanda nodded and smiled. She liked this man, who, by the way, was not as simple as he looked at first glance. He was now wearing an expensive suit of fine wool. The shoes and shirt were apparently from French manufacturers. The watch on his arm gave him away as a rich and wealthy man. When Edward dictated the waitress's order and she left, he looked at Amanda carefully and smiled at her. No, he didn't make the right choice. The girl realized her mistake and apologized, and definitely not under Adrien's edict. His son isn't the type to ask for anything. I understand you're Adrien's father, but unfortunately, I don't even know your name. She looked at him with her brown eyes and smiled sweetly. Edward, you've been caught in a situation by a little damn thing. Yes, some little grown-up woman with her own taste and style, who knows her power and ability to charm. What do you say to all that? Hi, I'm the Edward who gave you all his money. Amanda, can I stay with Mr. A for a while? I wonder if you are. No, I'm not an old maniac or a moral freak. It's just complicated. Even with a girl you don't know, it's complicated. But I apologize, all right. If you don't want me to look for you or call you later, I won't insist. I'll tell you right away if you don't want to talk. You don't have to. So she washes her hands of it. I did everything to apologize and I don't even know what to call you. The man smiled and began. There are a few minutes they ate in complete silence. And when dessert was served, they talked about this and that. But Edward was tormented by one question. How serious is the girl's relationship with his son? Amanda, can I ask you an indiscreet question? Yes, of course, if he's modest, of course. As modest as possible, like a father's question. How serious is your relationship with Adrien? If you're his fiancé, I'd like to know a little more about you. Pardon the old man's frankness. My relationship with Adrien is very, very serious. Am I his fiancé? I don't think so, since we haven't known each other that long. Plus, the girl you're with is smart and sensible. That's good. She's a good person to deal with. That's basically what the firm told him. They say the girl is smart, really looks at things. That's good. Honestly, I like the look of a pretty face and wealth. You don't build a castle, but you're realistic about things. How's your job going? My job is great. It's a translation agency. I work there in the Oriental Languages department with the best supervisor. His name is Yoon Lee, by the way. And you know, he was so surprised when he first saw me at work. The girl remembered her first day at work and smiled. I came to work in a Chinese silk marriage suit. With a beret in my hair, I thought it would be appropriate. But then my boss recalled to me that he saw not a specialist in Oriental languages with a red diploma, but a fan of Chinese style. And what's so funny? Edward was genuinely surprised. And then he explained to me that now in China, the trend is towards everything Western European. There, in culture and style, the way they dress and everything. And here I am in my own outfit. Yeah, I've encountered this, by the way, but I don't really like this trend myself. Oriental culture is a subtle thing, just like language. And Chinese or Japanese citizens, it doesn't matter, they shouldn't lose it. You talk so much about the East. You've lived there all your life. I haven't lived there, but I've been there. I've been interested in the Orient since I was a kid, the language, martial arts, and all that. So you're a translator. Basically, an assistant for the time being. And to become a real specialist in this office, you have to pass a lot of exams. I'm not ready for that yet. In time, though, I hope to become one. The man nodded his head and thought to himself again that he had made the right choice. The girl with the balance and proper preparation approaches to the matter does not seek to reach the top by all means and slowly, confidently goes up. If you need my help, contact me. Again, we're back to the first question. What's your name? And here's the next question. How can you help me? When you need help, Call me." And the man handed her a blank business card with his phone number written on it. "That's my number." "No name." The girl looked at the business card with the phone number printed on it in surprise. With no name and no grouping of any kind. Strange, such an enviable man and such a simple business card. And therein lies the crux of the matter, and the lesson you learned not so long ago behind the hapless and unassuming appearance can hide a wealthy and most importantly influential man. I've learned that. Thank you for the lesson. Often fate teaches us such lessons that we can't help but think. And Amanda shook her head. You know what they say about a real Jew? Thank God for money, if that's what you mean. Oh yeah, I know that saying all too well. My dad's Jewish, so I hear it a lot in my house. Yeah, but Jewish roots are always on my mother's side. Yeah, my mom's half French, and my grandmother, after whom I was named, is a true Elysian. Wow, that's quite a mix of blood. Now I see where you're coming from. Intelligence and beauty. And they both laughed, but the girl looked at the man carefully and asked, Mr. X, how can you help me? If so, what is the price of your help? I'm sorry I'm going back to the old question, but Amanda, don't worry. I won't charge you a dime for my help. And if you ask me why, I'll tell you one thing. You apologized for that incident on the plane, and I have a lot of respect and appreciation for people who can recognize their mistakes and accept to correct them. That's a quality not every man has, let alone a woman. So I'm an exception to the rule. A unique exception. Intelligence and beauty are in harmony in you. As my grandmother says, a potent mix. And your grandmother's right. You will. The girl shook her head. After all, she realized that Mr. X is not as simple as he seems, and introducing him to the house would be wow. They sat and talked, drinking probably the third, fourth cup of coffee, and did not notice how time flies. Wow, time flies. It's already the 4th hour. Can I take you out for a walk in the city, Amanda, if you don't mind strolling the streets of the evening city with an elderly man like me? Well, how elderly are you? I think you're a young man's man. Is that supposed to be a compliment? No, Mr. X, it's a statement of fact, and it's not a flattery, believe me. Thank you, sweet creatures. They laughed merrily and cheerfully. And cafe visitors looked at this couple and thought how beautiful they are together, daughter and father. But few people guessed who they were to each other. No one knew that these people met here and now for the first time, and the girl did not know about the existence of this Mr. X until a certain day. Nor did the man himself know of the girl, but had almost never seen her in person. Such were the entanglements of fate, but it was she who not only brought them together, but made them the happiest. The couple walked around the city, admired the beauty of its old neighborhood, and chatted about everything. Adrien had not been as happy as he was now for a long time, except when he met his spouse and proposed to her, as when his spouse gave him 3 children. But then work, work, and more work. Then a scary diagnosis and total apathy. Amanda, thank you for this wonderful evening. You've given me tons of amazing moments and moments I'm happy I haven't had in a long time. Honestly, the girl was impressed by such words of a mature and imposing, and most importantly, wealthy man. Yes, I haven't felt so happy for a long time, if you don't mind. I can call you sometimes. What's that supposed to mean? Don't worry about it. I'm not trying to steal my son's girlfriend, but you know, I have cancer, and I have nothing left to live for. So moments like this are precious to you. You're right, sweet girl. Amanda looked at the man carefully, and a certain feeling crept into her heart again. Not like a suspicion, not like a feeling that she had overlooked something, but she couldn't catch the thought yet. Cancer. Again, those gray eyes split by a scar, an eyebrow. But no, she shook her head. Amanda, you're fine. I hope the heat didn't take its toll on you. You know, I get the impression I know you from somewhere, but I can't yet figure out where or how or when or where we might have crossed paths. I'm sure he was hoping Charlie didn't sketch you and show it to his daughter. Even if he did, it doesn't make any difference now. I don't know, just understand the feeling and nothing more. Well, maybe you look like someone. That's what came to mind now. The man shrugged and led the girl down the hall. They shook hands, and at that moment the girl felt an electric shock. And this man was definitely familiar to her, and she would definitely remember where she knew him from. Quickly saying goodbye to her new acquaintance, the girl rushed to her room and dialed her father's cell phone. Daddy, hi, how are you? Hi, daughter, I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Nothing happened. It's okay. Dad, do you love me? Of course, what kind of question is that? Dad, can you draw me a picture of your friend from memory, of course? You know, like he was when he was young. In principle, I can. Why would you do that? Dad, just please do it for me. It's very, very important. You will. All right, well, I'll drop it off tonight and text it to your phone. Dad, I'll give you the hotel number, so fax it to the front desk. I will. Okay. How's the old city standing firm? Have you been to the Holy Sepulchre? Oh, I've been everywhere today. I've seen almost everything. Daddy, I'm tired, to tell you the truth. Now I want to sleep in the shower. All right, my girl, I won't hold you. Go to the shower and rest. I'll text you tomorrow then. And he hung up. So his daughter is doing well. And maybe Edward wasn't lying, and he'll put the money in her name. She can do what she wants to do and everything will be fine. Money today, it made all the difference. And Charlie didn't want Amanda working like she was. No breaks, no weekends working her ass off. She deserves better. Just like Joan and me. Charlie stepped out onto the balcony, looking up at the evening sky. The sunset had painted it blood red, but that didn't frighten Charlie. Thank you, Lord, for the blessings you've given us. Amanda, on the other hand, had just gotten out of the shower and poured herself a cold drink into a glass. She went out onto the balcony. Wow, the same sunset as in London. Nothing in this world changes. She smiled at the sky, raised her glass as a sign of greeting, and began to drink it in small sips. So sleep and only sleep. Tomorrow would be a new day and new. She did not continue the sentence. After all, she wanted a miracle of some kind of magic, that this Mr. X became her prince or king, and she became a queen. It all made her dizzy. But somewhere in the background, like a dark shadow of the night, a dark sense of unease was creeping out. Yeah, it's weird what's going on here. But it can't be that good. It can't be too smooth and beautiful, like in a fairy tale. Still, even being in a fairy tale princess should sleep with the balcony closed. The girl turned on the air conditioner and jumped on the bed with a sprint. Thank this Mr. Edward, who gave her such a wonderful vacation and $1 million fortune. I don't think so. Sweet girl, the fortune isn't yours yet, or maybe it is, but you don't know it yet. Okay, it's bedtime, and she snuggled comfortably into the light blanket and fell asleep almost instantly. Sleep, girl, for fate is unpredictable, and there's no telling what tomorrow holds in store for you. And tomorrow was cloudy and rainy, which is uncharacteristic for a country summer. Amanda woke up and looked out the window. Oh wow, it's pouring. It was like the heavens had burst and a worldwide flood had begun. Amanda got out of bed, stretched and went to the shower, got under the streams of warm water, and washed away her night's sleep. Now it was time to go to breakfast. Dressed, the girl went down to the hall and was surprised on the couch with her back. To her sat her yesterday's acquaintance in person, Mr. H. Wow. Ada thought and froze in place, not knowing how to act, how to react to his presence. Attention. Indeed. But at that moment, the girl was noticed by the receptionist and smiled at her. Amanda. Edward stood up and turned to the girl. In his hands, he held a long, luxurious white rose. Wow, a new beau. Amanda thought, he's not even embarrassed that I'm dating his son. How can I not swear after that? Amanda tried not to show her displeasure. She made a surprised face and approached Edward. Good afternoon, Mr. H. I suppose you came here to give me this rose. Nice, but excuse me, mister, I don't know why you're doing this. But I told you yesterday, and I'll say it again, your son and I are a couple. I'm well aware of that for that very reason. I'm here now, Amanda, no offense, but I need to talk to you, and seriously. And about what? If it's no secret? Not a secret. You'll know everything, but not here, not right away. Do you mind if we go to the conference room and talk? This place is set up for negotiations. It's been checked to make sure it's free of all kinds of wiretaps, so I can rest assured that information won't get past the doorstep. The girl tilted her head to the side for a moment and looked at the man carefully. To believe him or not, though, what did she have to lose? The conference room is a place in the hotel. There's security there, and such a rich man would do nothing to hurt her. She nodded her head and followed him. In the small hall, a tea table with novel coffee and sweets was already prepared. A round table was placed, on which a bouquet of white roses was already standing. 2 chairs were placed. This must be the bag your rose came from. You're right, Amanda. From this one and this flower, I'm putting back in its place. These flowers are yours. They can be taken to your room if you want them. That's later. For now, I'm quite curious. What do you want to talk to me about? The man sat the girl down at the table, then poured a cup of coffee from the coffee shop and served it to Amanda, poured a cup for himself and sat down opposite the girl at the round table. He gathered his thoughts, but could not start a conversation. We'll be silent for a long time. Amanda, as one of my martial arts teachers used to say, hurry up slowly. Did your father ever tell you about his old friend Edward? Yeah, my dad told me about him, that he saved him from a stray bullet that scarred his eyebrow, like yours. But he also owns the translation company where I work. Who are you exactly? Why are you asking me these questions? The man did not say anything, but drank coffee and took out a passport from his inner pocket and opened it and handed it to the girl. Amanda finished it, the document lying hidden in front of her on the table, and could not believe her eyes. It was a passport issued in the name of Edward. Come on, it can't be. And you just can't be him. You're Edward, owner of Edward & Co., the same Edward that no one had ever seen. The man smiled to himself. After all, he knew very well how many ridiculous rumors were going around his person. Yes, that's me, and you can check the document for authenticity in any way you like. And Adrien is your son? Yes, he's my younger son. He's a pilot in civil aviation. Now you know who I am. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself on the plane yesterday because I wanted to see for myself who I was giving my billions to. I hope Charlie told you about you being the Harris. My dad told me about it, but I didn't believe it until the last minute. Now I'm sorry. I've been waiting and looking forward to meeting you for so long. And now that I see you, I don't know what to say. I know you've been looking for me, and you've been looking for me, and you've been looking hard for me. That's what made me choose you. You've probably asked your mom and dad why I don't leave money to my kids. Well, I have terminal cancer, and when I needed help, they weren't there for me. It's sad. Kids, spouse, friends, they just left. They're waiting for you when you die to divide your inheritance. But why you? Your father was the only one who called me, encouraged me, called me to come to him. But I knew it was hard to see. A sick friend is painful for him, for his family. I didn't want to put him through that. Plus, when I was young, your father saved me. That split eyebrow is a reminder of that, by the way. Amanda stood up and paced the room from corner to corner. She disbelieved and believed the man's words at the same time. How am I supposed to live with all this? You don't. Get an inheritance after my death. Start your own business. As far as I understand, you're a girl capable of excellent knowledge of Oriental languages, so you can safely open your own translation agency. In the meantime, I'll ask you to spend a few days with me in this country, in this ancient city. Amanda sat down and put her hands on the table. She looked at the man carefully. Didn't know what to do. She cupped her head with her hands and thought about it. What did she have to lose by spending this time with Edward? Nothing, only gain. Edward, you do realize that you've set me up with your family in this way. Your wife and children won't want to share that kind of money with me. Who's going to tell them? I think your son has a pretty good idea. Now that you've told me everything, it all makes sense. I remembered. Adrien was hanging around my house after my father told me about your gift. He'd been hanging around for days and met me. You must have made a mistake somewhere. Mr. Edward, now you see the danger I'm in. Edward shook his hand reflexively, and the fine china cup shattered into tiny pieces. If that's true, Amanda is in mortal danger. It was Adrien who of all his children was the most persistent and fiery. If he made up his mind about something, he'd see it through. I'll talk to him. And what will you tell him? Don't touch her. Ouch, ouch, ouch. A wide of the finger and he'll leave me alone. I don't think so. I'm sure he won't just leave me alone. What am I supposed to do? Give him the money or marry him? Or maybe just change my looks, get a new identity and move to the ends of the earth? What about my parents? The man glanced at Amanda and pulled out his cell phone. He dialed Adrien's cell phone number and asked, Adrien, hi. Please tell me how you know that I gave the money to Amanda, your new acquaintance, and don't you dare lie to me. I'll give you a polygraph. There was silence on the other end of the line. What could he say? In the beginning, he really knew everything. He wanted to get Ada to give him the money, but then, Dad, I'll tell you the truth. I overheard you on the phone by accident, Then I just figured out where you were calling and who you were calling. And then I met Amanda. Yeah, I was gonna make her give me the money, but now I want to." He wondered for a minute if he wanted to take her as his wife, and then he answered himself, "I do. What do you want? I want to be near her. I like her. I don't know if I'm ready to marry her or what our relationship will be like later. But for now, it's serious. Not even for the money. It's not even for you or my mom. It's because I love her. Where are you, by the way? Still in Israel? Well, tell Amanda I said so. I will." And Edward hung up. His son's answer surprised him, even dumbfounded him. But he had no doubt that he was telling the truth. Adrien simply couldn't lie. He couldn't lie. If he tried to deceive, it was always his trembling voice that gave him away. He looked carefully at the girl and realized that his son's words had caused her the same surprise he had. "I heard. I'll be honest. I know my son, and he's not lying. I'm at peace here. And I have nothing to be afraid of." The man thought for a moment and said, looking at the girl with gray eyes behind the steel that was playing at that moment, "Nothing. Consider this my guarantee of immunity to you. Edward, but you're not omnipotent or eternal. Pardon the pun. Sometimes I think it would be easier for me to give up my inheritance." The man looked away and looked at the white walls. One step away from great change. I asked myself the question, what would I do if I were you? You know what? Amanda shook her head negatively. At this point, her hands and feet were shaking from the excitement and fear she had experienced. After all, to be honest, she only now realized how much money she could command in the future and what kind of war could go on for even a 1/100th of their share. "I definitely wouldn't miss that money. You're like me, a warrior by nature. And my words may sound pathetic, but you shouldn't dismiss them. Your worries are unfounded. I've thought this through. I don't understand you, honestly. In my will, if anything happens to you in the next 30 years, all the money goes to an anonymous account in Switzerland. I put that in the letter I sent to the kids today, all 3 of them. Let them know the truth. Probably should have done it sooner, but it turned out that way." Edward finished the sentence to himself and let it stay that way. They sat in the empty office, and each thought about his own. But the active nature of Edward and Amanda did not let them fall into despondency. That's my story. Girl, I have some more questions for you. I understand I'll be inheriting your estate after your death. That's correct, but that's all you care about. No, I've always cared, and I still care about one question. Why haven't you come to us yet? Before, obviously, you didn't want to put yourself or me in harm's way. Never mind a friend in his family. But now that all the cards are out in the open, that's a reasonable question. But we should first ask Charlie if he'd want an old and sick friend in his house. So maybe we should dial them up and ask him in person. Or like yesterday, we'll play him a certain Mr. X. The man smiled and looked at Amanda. There was something about her. She certainly wouldn't miss her chance and spend her money on anything. Yeah, girl, I'm not wrong about you. I really wanted you to be my daughter, but God gave you to Charlie. She might be right. Really, dial up an old friend and ask to visit him. Edward took his cell phone and found Charlie's number in it. Dialed it, and after the 5th ring tone, was immediately taken aback by the statement. "Charlie, greetings from the promised land. It's okay if I call you that affectionately." "It's okay. You're not my wife who calls me that often, but you're still the closest thing I have to a friend. How are you doing? How are you feeling?" "I'm okay, considering where I'm at, but that's not why I'm calling you. Would you mind if I came to see you in, say, 5 days?" Charlie hadn't expected such a turn of events and sat down in his chair, dropping the sketch sheet from his hands. "Come to my house. In London, on the waterfront." "Yes, exactly to you in the capital and exactly on the seafront." "Edward, you make me the happiest man in the world. I'm surprised you're not standing on my doorstep and banging on the door with all your might." "I won't knock. It's not culturally impolite of me, but I can ring your doorbell insistently. Is that okay or not?" "You're always welcome in my home. You know that," Charlie said in a serious tone. "I'll be waiting for you. I understand you'll be traveling with Amanda." "Yeah, I'm gonna take her on a tour of Israel. Then we'll fly home together to an old friend of mine I haven't seen in almost 25 years. You'll have a long time to apologize and drink cognac for the meeting. By the way, the one you gave me for my wedding is still sitting in the bar as an untouchable reserve." "Oh, come on." "Uh-huh. All the more reason to come." And Edward hung up the phone. He lowered his head and looked at the foam on his hands and thought what an idiot he was that he did not communicate with his friend for so long. Afraid of what? Of his money and power, I guess. And now he was passing it all on to the younger generation. Let Amanda and his kids decide what to do with his empire, power, and billions. It's good to see a smile on your face, Mr. Edward. Ada's voice sounded sincere, with a warmth that was not in his children's voices. Was I such a fool that I missed raising my children because of work and the pursuit of money? And now they are reaping the rewards. I'm happy for the girl my friend raised, who has more soul in her voice than my sons and daughter. I don't know what to tell you, but you wanted what was best for them, and you did it well. And the fact that it turned out this way. But do you still have time? Maybe you should fight your illness and catch up with your grandchildren. She looked at the man carefully, at this aging and out-of-it billionaire who basically had nothing and no one but herself and her father. Amanda felt sorry for him, and the girl put her palm on his hand and looked into his eyes, spoke confidently. If God gives me a boy, I will name him Edward. Do you mind? Edward looked at her quietly, weeping silently. It was the first time this had ever happened to him. That's how he showed his tears in front of a stranger. He shook his head. He quickly got up and left the office, headed for the restroom. Had to clean himself up. Amanda, I will be the happiest grandfather if you name your son after me, Edward said, returning to the study a few minutes later. I will also be happy if my son has a grandfather like you. He has one grandfather, of course, but the second one, so to speak, is not enough to complete the set. The next 5 days flew by without a hitch. Even to say, swiftly passed before our eyes, in a round dance of sights and warm evenings of gentle sea and long conversations about life. Already sitting in the airplane on the neighboring seats, the girl caught herself thinking that during all this time she hadn't thought much about Adriano. Yes, he called, asked how things were going, but it was with Edward that she was at ease, like behind the stone wall of a castle fortress, where she wanted to return again and again. And I'm sure. What are you talking about? Is that the daughter? It's nothing, just a thought. Amanda didn't even know who she loved more than Adrien or her father. She didn't realize that a relationship with Edward could never begin or continue. Even though she had been so fierce about meeting him before, wanting to see him, to understand what kind of man he was. No, she had not cut Adrien out of her life, but she realized that it was his father who was both her ideal man and her authority. She grinned to herself once more and giggled softly. This caused a look of bewilderment on her companion's face. Now he was already dressed in a snow-white suit and a hat, holding in his hands a leather case with documents. And no one would say that the man was not in his place, said nothing to Amanda's giggles. After all, he understood a woman's soul is dark. And his thoughts were already far away in the capital, where his best friend was waiting for him with impatience and joy. And here our plane landed. Joan stood on tiptoe and looked eagerly at Amanda and Edward. I wonder if I'll recognize your friend after all this time. Charlie also looked toward the plane and put on his glasses to get a better look at the people coming down the ramp. His heart was racing. No wonder. An old friend, whom they had not seen for nearly a quarter of a century, had come to see him. Indeed, would he recognize his friend after all this time? Charlie, there's Amanda in the white dress and apparently Edward in the white suit next to her. Yeah, that's Amanda, and apparently. Charlie couldn't even pronounce his friend's name. He was so excited. His hands were shaking and his knees were buckling, and his wife couldn't help but notice. Charlie, you're really worried like a little kid about your friend or your daughter, aren't you? I don't know. Both, Joan, both. Charlie recognized Edward right away. He stood there like a fool, unable to move, unable to take a step toward him. Edward slowly approached his old friend and looked at him with such familiar eyes. And then they both, without collusion, laughed and opened their arms to each other. Edward is the friend. I'm so glad. How happy am I? You have no idea how stupid I was not to come here and invite you to my place. Now we're gonna make up for that mistake. Don't ever tell me you're afraid or anything like that again. I won't forgive you or even think about it. I was blind and stupid. I was afraid of something I didn't even know I was afraid of. But I gotta be honest, I don't regret giving all that money to Amanda. She's a real fighter. She's just like me and her mom. And also in her grandmother, the girl said, and everyone laughed. Edward grabbed Charlie and looked at Joan and said quietly, "It's good to have all of you." The two old friends talked merrily at the top of their voices, uninhibited by people laughing and patting each other on the back. Every man's heart was overflowing with happiness. After all, no one knows what awaits them tomorrow. And every meeting could be the last. The car was taking the two old friends and the two women home. It was home. Each of them thought and realized that now everything would be different in a new way, as it had never been before. What would fate prepare for them in the future? They could not know, and they did not want to know. It was the moments here and now that mattered to each of them. But each was determined to defend his happiness and the right to live under the sun with a new vigor.